Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wholehearted Loving. I'm Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Georgiana.
Today, we started out kind of low energy, so we're going to have today's opening practice. Well, actually, maybe first I'll say that in this episode, we are going to be talking about celebrations and misery. How do we connect and share our joy and delight when people around us might not be feeling happy or good? How do we share and connect when we're on opposite sides of the joy spectrum with the people that we love? And we're going to build up a little energy and delight here by having our opening practice be making silly faces at each other. So if you're like got your headphones in and you're walking on the seawall or wherever, we would encourage you to make funny faces at the people passing by. Or, your family that's in the room or wherever you are, feel free to join us. I got a horse face. Oh. Oh my gosh. Well, if you're not watching this, and you're hearing our sounds, hopefully that also brings you some silliness. G, can you talk to us a little bit about what might be happening in our physiology when we're making silly faces at each other?
Well, laughter and play we've lost touch with so much because we think we should be serious. We should be respectable, whatever that means. And I think we kill off a lot of life force energy by telling ourselves, I should be proper, whatever that means. And I did this very easily today, but I can assure you it must have been. Tell us why you're laughing, Stephanie.
Georgiana would not have been so delighted to make silly faces, especially in a public forum, in previous iterations of her life.
Yeah, like 6 years ago, if you would have suggested that, I would have been like, you're insane. There's no way. You could not pay me enough to make a silly face on like a live video that people are going to see. Probably not even just you and I in a room, because I was so conditioned that I needed to be proper and needed to be respected. In order to be respected, there's a professionalism. And in order to be professional, you basically had to kill off any personality and anything that wasn't, I don't know, serious. And so what I easily did here and what felt very freeing here to do is something that would have mortified me in the past, like absolutely mortified me. And I remember actually this, I don't know if you thought it was a game. I think you were just being you. And it was in times where we were on Zoom calls, like a lot of Zoom calls. Do you remember? And Stephanie, for anyone who has like a webcam on your computer or laptop, she would go straight up into the camera where you see your face super contorted and would make these talk in this funny voice. And you had a funny name. You made up a funny name for this character. And I delighted in it. And I thought you were nuts. And then I was like, well, why not join her? And I could feel it was such a growth edge for me. Like it was awkward. Like I felt the pull of how cool would it be to live a life so free that I don't care. I don't care if I look silly. I don't care if I look dumb. I don't care what other people think. And I knew that in order to live that way, I would have to push past some of these old constraints that want to pull me back and say, don't do that. Don't make yourself look like an idiot. And so I joined you, and it was delightful. And I had so much fun. And you laughed so hard. I think just because you can connect to laughter easily, but I think also because there must have been some joy and delight in seeing me be that way. And we had
Yeah.
such a good time. And that moment, I think, forever changed me. Like it
Oh,
helped me cross over to this place of it's okay just to be however. And it has no like it does not impact your worth and who you are as a person. If anything, it actually is freeing.
and
So
makes you approachable and relatable and frees, yeah, liberates so much in the people who are around us,
and
especially if they've got ideas about professionalism or not
yeah,
making silly faces.
totally. And I remember when you and I were facilitating women's groups together, and I had experienced this often, where people would say, "Oh, I really connect with you, G, because you bring this kindness and this warmth." And I think someone said to me recently, "You have this like mothering energy where I just feel safe with you." And I was like, "Yeah, I can see that." And I also would notice what people would say to you. And people would always be so grateful to you because they felt like you were so expressive. You would say the things that everybody thought but were afraid to say out loud. You didn't care what sounds you made. You like didn't care like how your body was like contorting into whatever positions. Like you were just sort of fully expressed in this way that I think could shock people and might scare people initially, but underneath that was a wow, like I'm allowed to be like that, and like she's like that, and she's also really likable. um and it was always really I don't know, I really enjoyed seeing how much people felt that it was like permission giving to be around you.
Oh, that's great.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's largely why I'm alive. Also, I do get mortified. I experience mortification, but it comes later when I realize that other people had a different context. So, um, conscious relationship training is a good example. When the instruction is, get in the middle of the circle and look like an idiot. I'm like, oh, there's the instruction. We're all on board. Off we go. And then so I jump in and look like an idiot. And I don't realize till much later that people are like, "Oh God, she looks like an idiot," or "I don't want to look like that." And eventually they get to, "Oh, yay, I can look like an idiot. I can do that." And then, 3 weeks later, I'm like, "Oh, there was this whole point where everybody thought everybody was an idiot. I thought we were just following instructions and having fun."
But well, I think that's even really neat that you can say, I thought we were just following instructions and having fun. I couldn't give myself that permission to follow
Yeah.
instructions and have fun because there was this huge fear of looking like an idiot.
Mm.
So, something that comes pretty easily to you of like, let's just follow the instructions and have some
Mm.
fun, can be really terrifying for people who have always been conditioned to be a certain way.
Yeah. One of my favorite internet phenomena is blame it on the intern. Have you heard of this
Mm-mm.
situation?
No.
There'll be threads on Reddit or wherever of people who've made mistakes as interns.
Okay.
And so I think some big company accidentally sent out an email, a mass test email or something they didn't intend to. And then they tweeted or whatever about it saying, we accidentally sent out this message, and yes, it was in fact the intern. And then they're flooded by messages of people sharing the stories of things that they did wrong when they were an intern. And I just can't stress enough how embarrassment is a mutual human experience. And rather than judging people, we often just feel so relieved and seen and connected when we've done something stupid or idiotic and shared it for all the world to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wish I would have encountered that earlier on in my life. I wish I would have felt that permission to be an idiot at home.
Mm.
And it brings me great delight. Like when I was watching my boys, or still watching them grow up, but one of the things I was paying attention to was, do they feel permission to be silly?
Mm.
And they have seen me, I think, be sillier than I've ever been in my life. So they get some of it. Um, but it's also not my like most natural way of being. So I'm intentional about practicing. Um, but every time I see silliness in them, it delights me so much, because what it tells me is like they're not imprisoned. They're not
Mm.
imprisoned with this belief that they have to be, a certain way. They
Yeah.
can't let loose, right? The other night, like they were just dancing in here in ways that would have mortified me as a child, to move like that and to laugh like that. And I don't know if I would have ever been caught dead, like being that way. And they just thought it was hilarious. And my kids, I feel like they're pretty serious. Like they're not your class clown kind of, like pretty serious kids. So I love that I can see them let go also and
Yeah.
have a good time. Yeah.
I really enjoyed my time with your sons doing our goat impersonations. Who doesn't love screaming like a goat? Probably a lot of people. I love it. Your sons love it.
That's what, like, I think it's important, for me to place myself around someone like you, to experience what a different kind of normal could be, and to see,
Mm.
like, nobody dies. People still like her, she's still smart and respectable. And also, like, for me, very intentionally, to like have my kids be around you. Like I want
Mm.
kids around people who are wired a bit differently than I am, who live a bit differently than I do, so they can be exposed to different ways of being and see that it's all okay. And I remember them having so much joy being able to like impersonate goats with you.
It felt very natural.
I'm like, you need an auntie who will do the best impersonations? You got Steph.
Yeah, I remember you saying something like, "Oh God, I'm glad they can do this with you."
Yeah, like I can do it, but I think my stamina for it is not like anything like yours.
Oh yeah, goat impersonations have a generative effect for me. The more goat you produce, the more goat appears within you.
I
Yeah,
think that's joy.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So if you're feeling down, practice impersonating a goat and see how that
Right?
feels.
See how it feels. It'll move something, that's for sure. This is, of course, a reasonable segue into the topic of being wired differently, expressing things differently, and deciding what's appropriate and what isn't. Um, if I'm feeling delighted and you're feeling sad, can both of these exist in the same space together? Can we celebrate me? Can we hold you? I
Mhm.
think in life, certainly something we've encountered in our groups is a natural tendency to want to subdue our joy in order to support people who are feeling down, maybe to hide our joy if it can't be received. And what we want to introduce y'all to is the idea that these can coexist and that actually this is sort of the balance that makes life beautiful.
Mhm. That was something that I really had to learn when I first started women's group. I think I'm wired to just feel compassionately for people. And so if someone is sharing something that they're having a challenge with, I bring my heart there. I want to hold, energetically, emotionally, physically. And the natural, I think, programmed response for me in the past was, well, then I better not say anything good about my life, because that's going to make them feel worse about theirs. And that would just get stuffed away. And we really got to practice in women's group how we can make space for everyone's experience, and that at any given time when you have just another one person, but there were many people in that group, we're not all going to be in the same energetic realm, in the same emotional realm at the same time. And that's okay. It doesn't mean one group has to cut themselves off from misery or cut themselves off from joy just so that the other can exist. And to be able to see women share back to back, like one woman shares like deep heartbreak and misery and grief, and the next share is like joy and delight in something that's happening in someone else's life. um I think it's such a muscle to be willing to share and go to those places, and it's a muscle to know that when someone shares their joy when you're in pain, it's not a slight on you. It's nothing personal. It's not that your grief and pain don't matter. It's we can hold that and make space for this. And I don't know, like the word insensitive just came up for me because I feel like we live in such this, politically correct, like what's the how should we behave kind of place. But I think there's a difference between being insensitive
Mm-hmm.
and rude and a really deep holding of someone in their pain. And I think something we also did really well in group was, does this feel complete for you? Is there anything else you need from us? Right? So the person who's having a hard time really gets to feel loved up on and supported and feel that all of our attention is there for them. And we're not trying to just brush this off and move on to the next delightful thing. It's we're
Mm-hmm.
here with you. And also when you feel that that's complete, then we bring our whole hearts to the next person and their experience in that moment.
Yeah. This is somewhere that I think context matters so much and is something that we actually have a lot of influence over if we bring attention to it. So, in the context you're describing, it's really easy for us to bring our whole selves because A, we've set up this container where people feel that level of trust and openness, but also everybody has whatever it is amount of time, 1 minute or 2 minutes, where everyone in the group agrees that for that 1 or 2 minutes, this person is sharing their experience. That's a context you can artificially create in your life anytime by agreement between the parties, right? But instead, our unconscious context is what comes up in relationships where maybe in our lives we've experienced that, when, I don't know, for just a random example, when mom's upset, no one's allowed to be happy. And then we carry that context forward in all of our relationships forever. Um, or in maybe a school dynamic, we might have a different experience where a whole different set of rules applies, and if we're not bringing attention to what sets of rules we're instating in these particular contexts in our lives, it's going to be confusing and difficult to bring what feel like different energies without any context or agreement.
I wish we changed all those rules and just
You
said,
wish what?
I said, I wish we changed all those rules and just said, be yourself.
Yeah.
Share what's happening, share what's real.
Yeah. Take up the space that you need. Yeah, share what's real. It's
Mm-hmm.
not personal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean it's not hard. If you're going through a hard time and someone's sharing something that's delightful for them, it doesn't mean if you feel jealous or envious or uncomfortable or angry or sad that that's wrong. It just means, oh, that stirred up that in you. And that's okay. And we can also sit with you in that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Moving those energies instead of boxing them in feels just so important and transformative. Um, and I think it takes time too, right? So for me, I remember several contexts in which celebrating joy that other people were experiencing also brought up pain for me that I wasn't experiencing that same joy. And at first, it was an intellectual exercise of going, okay, I know, like, brain knows I love and want to celebrate with this person, and
Mhm.
heart is grieving and trying to balance those two. And I think I just cried for the first 3 years incessantly. Um, and eventually that shifts, as I face that. Jealousy turns to envy, turns to desire, something that had some kind of icky energy attached to my also celebration of joy. Eventually, like, clarifies, purifies, and can, it's like I've removed story from the sensation, the feeling of joy, and now I'm just closer to the pure joy of these
Mhm.
celebrations.
And I think we can only come closer to the pure joy when we give ourselves permission to have our process in our own time, to feel the grief, right? To feel the
Yeah.
jealousy and the envy and the desire. For me, I sort of, when I knew we were talking about this topic, I sat and thought about what it took for me to get from, ugh, I don't want to hear about your joy because I feel miserable, to being able to like delight in someone's joy with them, because you're not always at that place. And it's okay to not always be at that place. But for me, it meant I really have to connect with, what is this that I'm grieving that I don't have, that this other person is experiencing right now? What desire is it connecting me with, right? With, when I feel jealous, when I feel envious, it's telling me I desire something that I don't have. Something about this touches, connects me to something I really want in my life as well, or wish I had. And I think it's important to give voice to that, to recognize that, and then to feel the feelings of not having that, the
Yeah.
grief of that. And then for me, there's another element of, and what will I do about it? If now I am aware that I have this desire, how will I baby step myself towards that reality that I get to experience this thing that I desire? Because it's one thing to grieve it, it's one thing to like desire it. But like, if I'm never going to do anything about it, then, well, that's a shame.
Right?
And
Yeah.
that's going to always leave me feeling like my delight is not fully genuine, because I
Yeah.
feel like something's missing for me.
Yeah.
Um,
I think
yeah,
a whole lot of those baby steps have like traditionally quite negative connotations. Like my first 50 baby steps in this area might have been like, fuck you for having this thing. Like,
yeah,
fuck you for even wanting this thing. You shouldn't even want it. Like, snark. They were snarky baby steps with attitude. And I can't remember who said it, but the distinction between jealousy and envy. And yeah, the beautiful gift of realizing that this thing that you're jealous of is something that you want. And not only is it something that you want, it's something that exists. And here's evidence of it right in front of you. And for sure, my first baby steps are actually baby kicks, where I kick the thing away and I kick the love away and I kick all of these things because
I don't
screw
want that.
you.
Um,
Totally. Right? And
yeah,
slowly but surely we
I
get
don't.
there.
I think it's important to recognize that I don't care. I didn't care anyways. I don't want that anyways. That's dumb. A
Right?
saying that my kids always said, and I knew that was a sign. Like, it was either that's dumb or that's boring.
Ah,
I always knew that when those two phrases came out of their mouths, it was touching on something that mattered to them.
yeah.
And I was like, okay, let's sit with this. Let's bring some curiosity to this. Like, what is it that you're wishing was happening right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. These are great realizations to have.
Yeah, I have a big example of, it wasn't a, well, no, it wasn't really a fuck you for having this, but it was a, seeing you have this really throws me into the reality of my pain and the reality of my life right now. And that feels already hard to be in, the
Hmm.
living in the pain, but to be reminded of it is, makes it even harder. And I don't know how much capacity I have to be reminded of it constantly, right? But
Yeah.
it was such a beautiful um, way to learn how to navigate friendship with someone who's super important to me. And so I'm happy to share that experience if that's helpful.
Yeah, please do.
Well, I remember it was, trying to calculate, I'm using my head as my finger to like go around the clock. trying to calculate timeline, but I think generally it was probably a year, not even a year, 6, 7 months after Daryl died. And one of my like bestest friends met the most amazing guy. And we had spent a lot of time being single together, and or either single together or living through each other's singleness, like side by side with each other. Like we just knew so much about each other's lives and what we desired in our hearts and what kind of relationships we desired. So I was fully invested in her heart being well met by someone. And she had met someone and she was excited about him. And I was like, I'm like 7 months out of someone tragically dying who I thought I was building something with. Um, it was tough because like there was the heart part of me and the brain part of me that said, I want to be there for my bestie and like be in the excitement with her and love her up in this. And I'm such a curious and excitable person. And I could feel like that part of me was dead at that time. Like I couldn't muster it up in me to bring that much curiosity to it. Typically I'd be someone who like would want to meet this guy and get to know him and help him feel like he was welcome and I was interested in him. And there was none of that. Like I could not access that. And I remember feeling that and knowing that and feeling sad about that. And also not giving myself a hard time. That was also very interesting. Like I wasn't giving myself a hard time. I was just accepting this is where I am right now. I don't have it in me to be or feel or express very much celebration around this, even though I'm super happy for my friend. And I remember we went out for dinner one night and I told her, said, I'm sorry. I feel really sad that I can't really access that right now. I am happy for you. And I don't know when that's going to come. But I'm sure it will at some point. And she was amazing and lovely. Like not expected her, but I anticipated her to be. And I think that those conversations are so important to be able to be honest with each other, to say like, I wish I had the capacity right now to like be so present for this with you and celebrate it and hear all your excitement about who this person is and how you feel and how you feel together and what you know, like all the things. I just couldn't.
Yeah.
And it felt really good though to like be that honest with her and for her to say, I get it. And for her, like, I don't remember if she said this, but I just would have imagined this. Like, I imagine there was some disappointment or sadness in her to not be able to like live it and fully express it with me and to me and have me delight with her in this newness. Um, and yet it was okay. It was allowed. I was allowed to be where I was. And that meant a
Mm.
lot to me.
Yeah. So good that you can share that. And that's also context from women's group and helpful actually. So you guys are both in women's group together. So it's like there's this mutual understanding. Yeah, one of the things I love about the sharing portion in our groups is reflections afterwards, so what came up for you hearing that. And one of the
Mm-hmm.
things that came up for you might be, I just feel exhausted. I feel like I don't have the energy that I want to be able to contribute to this, or I feel jealous and ashamed, or whatever it is that you feel is
Yeah.
also welcome and true.
Yeah, I remember telling her exactly that, like over dinner though, like not in the context of a women's group, but
Yeah.
we had that skill set, you know, and
Yeah.
she had the skill set to receive it and see that it's not a personal thing. And I had the skill set to just share transparently where I was. And I think I said to her, it's too painful right now because it just brings up too much stuff that I have to face and feel, and I already have to face and feel that without this. And so knowing this, hearing about it, it just really puts it in my face. And I don't have capacity to feel all of that.
Yeah.
or right now. And also because over time, as I got to know more about him through her telling me, there were a lot of similarities in this new guy and Daryl in certain ways that they would be, in like the way he showed up in her life and was really wonderful. It was very similar to what I had experienced. And so like that was just like, oh, like doubly hard, And
Mm.
I remember like this is the process of life and trusting timing and what happens when you let yourself be where you need to be and feel what you need to feel and you don't rush yourself. There was one day, this was probably months later, and she sent me a photo. She was with her new partner and they had taken all of our children to the rec center to play drop-in basketball. And my kids are super sporty, hers are as well. Kids were delighted. And she sent me this picture of them all having a great time. And I saw it and I delighted in it. It made me so happy to know that she was with this great guy who like loved on the kids and like was really great with them all, and that my kids could experience seeing them in relationship. My kids could see her kids like form this connection with this guy, and they could just all play basketball and have a good time together. I was delighted. I don't think I replied right away to the picture. I just enjoyed it. And her and I went for a walk one day. And I think she said, immediately after I sent that photo, I was like worried, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have sent it. Maybe this is too hard to see. Like, maybe, who knows, right? And I don't think she stressed out about it, but it was just something that came up for her of like, oh, would that have been really hard for G to see that? Because that would have been something that Daryl would have done with all four of our kids at some point. And when we were walking, I said, you know what? And this is a celebration. I said, that didn't cross my mind at all. Like, it did not cross my mind at all. I was just so happy. And not to say that that's the end goal, but it just felt really lovely to like be at that place and know that I didn't force myself to get to that place. It just naturally arrived because I didn't push myself to come there sooner. And it was like
Mhm.
fully genuine. I was really ready to delight in that moment. It wasn't like I should really be happy for them, so let's put on a happy
Yeah.
face. And that was I said, do you know how exciting this is for me to know that the flavor of grief changes,
Ah,
and that like there's still sadness in me, but it's not as big, and
yeah,
it doesn't overshadow these joyful moments anymore in the same way. And
totally.
it was a really beautiful moment, the two of us realizing
Mm.
that. And then fast forward some more, they recently got married and I got to be there, and I think it was very intentional that they invited me. It was a very small wedding. I was, I think, the only friend invited, so I felt
Mm.
a big honor. And I love that I got to like just experience that joy with them and to see how beautiful their relationship and to feel in me that well of excitement that I like
Mhm.
2 years prior, like I just didn't even know where it was. And I was able to say to him, I didn't have a chance to get to know you at the pace and in the way I would have wanted to at the time because of what was going on in my life. And I'm so excited to be in a place where I have that in me now to, really get to know you. And it just felt really nice to sort of come full circle and come to
Mhm.
a place where I know that if grief wasn't weighing that heavily on my heart, that's who I am and who I want to be with people. And that when I gave myself those 2 years, it naturally came back.
one of the things that I feel super delighted about is that, so I'm a single 43-year-old woman, and people's love used to just make me cry and mourn and yearn, you know? And what I'm currently experiencing, it's almost like catching up with a awesome TV show or a book where you're like, oh, what's happening in their world? Like, take me there. I have a friend who is in love. And I feel like, not that I'm in love, but I'm vicariously in love. Like, I'm like, ooh, love and romance is happening. Like, sweet, catch me up, you know? And it really feels delightful in a way that isn't tinged with my own, unrequited yearnings or whatever. It feels so good. It feels so good to be able to just delight and not have all of this other stuff attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it took work. And these are outcomes I didn't anticipate. I started doing inner work just looking for some answers within myself about like existential realities and maybe doing relationship in healthier ways. And all of these little outcomes have been such a delightful treat.
Mm-hmm. What what does it bring you to get to delight in someone else's joy now?
It brings me feelings of delight. It
Mm,
lightens me. Um, and it is evidence, you know?
mm,
Um, I spent a huge chunk of my life just thinking men are pigs, and then I spent a good amount of time seeking evidence that men are good and found it in every corner of my life already existing there, just being roundly ignored by yours truly. And now just seeing, more and more of it out in the world in all these places. In instances where, there are all these Facebook groups where women are talking about men they're dating and high value this and that. And there'll be cases where a woman will say, oh, look, this guy is doing or saying these things. Like, should I just run away? Is he just a pig? And there'll be like 100 women who pile on top with the pig assessment. And when I'm reading it with my new, more loving, compassionate eyes, I'm like, oh, that's not what's happening here at all. This sounds like a really good dude. And inevitably the comments will also be peppered with women saying, no, I think he's just doing, normal human things and sounds like a good guy. So the perspective is so important, obviously.
I think the evidence we look for, we're looking for evidence all the time, right? But most of us are conditioned to look for evidence to prove crappy things are true.
Yeah,
And so practicing looking for evidence that there's goodness out there is important.
yeah,
Mhm.
indeed.
Um, I know you touched on it a little bit. Like, what's the path from going from fuck you and I don't even want that to now I can delight in someone else's, big love feelings?
For me, it's, I think, a path of honesty and exposure. Um, so being exposed to things that might give me new perspective or um, new ideas about how things could be and new perspective on how I might be viewing the world and how that could be reframed or shifted.
Mm-hmm.
And then exposing my feelings about things, my stories, my thoughts, my feelings, clearing those thoughts out verbally or in writing or energetically in movement. Yeah, and being really honest about what I'm feeling and thinking and what the beliefs that underlie that are,
Mm-hmm.
um, and what the possibilities actually are.
Mm, yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Curious, what were some of your this is something I've noticed about you is I think your realm of what's possible has expanded in like so many realms. How has seeing what other people have that you also want and maybe don't have, how has that shifted what you think or believe is possible?
It shows me that it's True. So Kara will often say this about online dating. She's like, "Well, you're amazing and you're on online dating," which I'm not, but at the time. Um, so that means that amazing things are there, like this or better. It used to be, I used to have more of a gripping, cloying kind of a feeling and a jealous scarcity idea about it. So now when I see something beautiful and loving and romantic, I'm like, great, that thing exists. There's yet more of that in the world. Hooray, my pool is larger. Whereas
Yes.
before I thought it was finite and, you know, it's for somebody else, but not for me. When in truth, depending on what evidence you're looking for, there's plenty to go around. So now it brings me joy instead of jealousy. It's representative of what I can have, what exists, what's possible, as opposed to reinforcing what I don't have and what somebody else has and what I might never get.
This is so neat because it's a real, just a mindset shift with a lot of like feelings work underneath it.
Yeah.
Um, but essentially, you're saying, great, now I know it exists. Where in the past, it was like, this fucking exists and I don't have it. My life
Yeah.
sucks, right? I'm not
Yeah.
saying it's exactly your train of thought, but like it has that essence,
It's basically that. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And how amazing is it to be able to look at something or someone and see that as what that reminds me of is possibility.
Yeah. Yeah. And kind of wavelength too. Like I do think of things in terms of like being on wavelengths or being in specific dimensions. So I sort of feel like I've shifted from scarcity dimensions to more sort of abundant dimensions. And that'll be reflected in the people around you and all of the things in your life. What this brings to mind for me is I remember when Elvis Stoico, the figure skater, did the first ever quadruple axel.
Mm.
And I think this is a good example because there are people who figure skate and there are people who don't. So in this analogy, the people who do figure skate are going to represent the abundance mentality, and the people who don't are going to represent the scarcity mentality. So when they see Elvis Stoico do this thing that's never been done, the scarcity people, the non-figure skaters, are like, wow, well, I guess that's for him. It's certainly not for me. I can't do that. And all of the figure skaters are like, oh my God, that's possible. And it immediately became on the roster. And this is a standard aspect of humanity. Somebody runs the fastest mile ever. Suddenly that's the new bar. And everybody starts achieving it. It becomes
Mhm.
normal.
Yeah, what you believe is possible. I remember this saying that really helped me during tough times. Let's see if I can remember it. Is most of us live in this way where we think, I need to see it to believe it. And this other perspective is you need to believe it to see it. You need to believe in the possibility of it for it to be able to come to fruition. And I remember very intentionally practicing shifting into that new belief. And it makes such a huge difference, right? I'm thinking of Elvis Stoico now and you grouping it in like skaters and non-skaters. I'm curious. My sense is there's also skaters who have that scarcity mentality too, who are
Yeah.
skaters, but they're like, that's not for me. He can do it, but there's no way I could. That's a possibility for me. Right. And so, such an interesting thing to check in on for ourselves. Do you only believe things are possible for others?
Mm-hmm. And how much work do you think? Like, I think there would also be a faction of those figure skaters who go, oh, okay, let me just rejig my mind. And now, okay, done. I'll do this. And there are others who would go, I am going to work my ass off until I can do that. Uh,
Yeah.
Significant
And
differences.
others who will go, I see now that's a possibility. I can mentally sort of gauge how much work that would be for me, and I'm not interested.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's okay too.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a desire, right?
Yeah.
Or if the work that it requires does not, balance out to be something you want to dive into, the return is not sufficient enough for your input.
Mm-hmm.
Have to.
Wonder how many axles they're up to now. I'm gonna look that up when we hang out. 6 axles? What would you call that? Anyway,
I don't know.
yeah, pretty neat.
Yeah.
So I guess I would encourage everybody who's watching or listening, take a notice at how witnessing or sharing joy or sadness with people in your life, how does that feel for you? What comes up? If you're feeling low and someone else is feeling high, or vice versa, what are the stories that go along with that? What are the mental patterns? What happens in your heart?
Yeah. What are the conditions that you believe are necessary in order for you to be allowed to share your sadness or grief? What the conditions are necessary for you to share your joy and delight?
Yeah.
And do you want those conditions to continue?
Yeah. And like the people around you, how do they respond? I love, there are people in my life, and I love all of these people in all of their different ways. There are people in my life who I would read. This friend in love has some lovely text exchanges that are just make me cry with joy to read. And I've got friends who I would read those messages to, and they'd roll their eyes and sneer. And other friends who would burst into tears of joy. You know, all of that can be happening all at once.
And I think it's nice to notice too, like, what experience do you want more of? And it's not a
Yes.
judging, right? I can tell, like, when I have good news to share with people, I can feel energetically who has capacity, and I don't judge it. It just gives me information. Who has capacity to meet me here with my delight?
Mm.
And what do I desire more? Do I desire someone that says, oh, great? Or do I desire someone who's super excited and can meet me with my excitement? What feels good for me?
Yeah.
And I'm naturally, or like maybe I've reconditioned myself to move towards what feels good. And it doesn't mean anything about the friendships where they can't meet me at that place, in terms of, like, it doesn't mean anything bad personally, but it
Mhm.
might mean, well, from the energetic exchange, I don't really get the feel that there's an openness for this sharing. So I'm going to take it to the places where there's lots of delight for it. And this actually makes me think of, for some reason, parents. I haven't always felt that my parents had space to hold my delight, because their fears would pop in and stuff. And for a long time, I'd feel just so down and annoyed about, why can't I bring my delight here? Why can't I bring my dreams here? And I think, sort of just make them wrong, make them bad in my mind, until I learned, like, that's just what their capacity is right now. That's okay. It's not personal. Let's bring my delight somewhere else and
Yeah.
see if someone else enjoys my delight, and someone else can, like, meet me in that delight. And oh wow, that actually feels better. Why not create that experience for yourself?
Right.
Hmm.
Yes, please.
Yes. And I hear that a lot from people who are so angry and hurt because sometimes the people in their life who they want to share delight with don't have capacity. And we work through, like, can you grieve that? That is really sad. It is disappointing. And also, who would delight with you? And is there a willingness to bring it there? But
Yeah.
some people won't go there because they're so stuck on, but this person should delight in it with me. And then
Yeah.
you don't even get to delight in it yourself anymore.
That's
That's
hard.
sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there, I'm thinking of a closing practice related to this. Is there an exercise that you would give us
Mhm.
for if you encounter one of these moments where you're wanting to express something and it's not being received, and how to be with that while it's happening?
Mm. Yeah, something's coming to mind. Okay. I would say let's feel our butts on the chair or whatever you're sitting on, or your feet on the ground. And I want you to bring to mind something that you're really delighted in right now in your life. And if it feels good, to just bring your hands to your chest and feel like, imagine yourself holding this thing that feels delightful to you. And when you're ready, we're just going to open up your arms as if you're sharing this delight out with someone or out into the world. And someone might be able to receive your delight, meet you there. They might not. Regardless, what you can do is you can bring that delight back in and sit with that delight again with yourself and enjoy how nice that is. And then when you're ready, you can open it up again. Maybe it's a different person you share your delight with. And just go back and forth. Like, this is practicing that flow of, I can hold my delight. Even if no one can appreciate this thing that makes me happy right now, I can feel the goodness of it. And then when and if I want, I can open it up out to the world and energetically share that, or with a specific person. And depending on what that feels good, you can stay there. If that doesn't feel good, you can come back. Yeah.
Great.
I used to always think that, like, I could only feel happy if other people felt happy also with me. And if they
Mm-hmm.
didn't, it would either mean I'm feeling happy about something that's not a big deal, or I just shouldn't feel this way because obviously I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And I really like this practice because it's a reminder of, like, I can hold my delight as well. Be like, it's
Mm-hmm.
my delight. It doesn't
Yeah.
go away just because someone else can't hold it or meet me there.
I think that's a really helpful tool. So if I was sharing something with somebody who was not receiving it in the ways that felt good to me, or if I was starting to feel shut down about it, maybe it wouldn't be appropriate in this space to be doing this exercise the way we've just done it. But I can definitely hold my hands on my heart in those moments and keep this thing that I wanted to celebrate or grieve held
Mhm.
metaphorically for myself there. That's
Mhm.
beautiful.
Yeah, and it goes with pain too. If someone can't hold your pain with you, like, you can still hold your pain and be
Mm-hmm.
gentle with it and welcoming of it. And there's many someones. If you try one person and they can't meet you there for whatever reason, like, what about somebody else?
Mm-hmm. Baby steps, practicing holding it, right? I certainly wouldn't have been able to hold my pain. I would have been able to follow your instructions, but I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't have really been holding my feelings with much love or genuine care. That
Mm-hmm.
was, I think, many of the baby steps on this journey,
I
learning
think
that.
what's great about these kinds of movements is you don't have to believe in it. You don't have to believe in it. You don't have to fully feel it. I think that just the understanding the concept and pairing it with movement, of the idea of
Yeah,
holding something and keeping it for you, and the idea of opening and sharing it with someone else. Doesn't matter
yeah,
if either one of those places terrify you or both of them terrify you, but it's just a beginning of saying,
yeah,
oh, those are possibilities. Maybe
yeah,
one day they will feel comforting. Maybe they
yeah.
won't. That's okay.
It takes you somewhere. I think it's very subconsciously comforting in ways that um, I couldn't cognitively receive for a long time, but it was doing something within me. It was making these little shifts that I would have
Yeah.
denied were possible. Yeah.
What's interesting is when I share these movement practices with people and pair them with these new beliefs, even if people haven't believed them right away, they don't get it. No one has ever said, wow, that made me feel much more terrible. No one.
No,
In fact, the opposite of, like, oh, feel a little bit better.
go
Or
figure.
that was sort of neutral, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Isn't neutral better than feeling another minute of, you know, hardship, anxiety, overwhelm, depression?
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, baby steps.
Baby steps, indeed. Is there anything else you want to say about holding joy and whatever else at the same time?
Mm, no, not right now.
Yeah, good.
Just let them be.
Okay. Yeah, just let them be.
Maybe I do have something to say. Usually there's going to be one side that's easier for us to notice, joy or pain. I would encourage you to practice noticing the opposite more often, looking for evidence of the opposite more often. Some of us like live in this joy and like pretend the pain isn't there. And we need to learn how to hold and feel and see the pain. And some of us really good at feeling and seeing the pain and forget that there's joy also and need to practice looking and feeling and seeing the joy.
Yeah.
So notice and practice.
Building new muscles. Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, with that, I think we will sign off for this episode. And I think we're going to do a few practice episodes as well, where we do a bit more of these practices together and talk a bit more about what's happening in our bodies and why they're beneficial for these many baby steps that we're referring to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. I will say, please like, follow, and subscribe. And if anything we've said here today has been helpful for you, please share it with somebody that you care about. We'll see you next time.
Bye.